Welcome to our show. This is the show that we bring to you every Thursday. It used to be every Thursday, 9 a.m., but we're now moving into 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so who's talking to you? My name is Dr. Christy Wuchukwu, and I host this Narrate Your Story every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is the show that I bring to you from people from all across the globe to really give you information, strategies, tools to up-level your life as well as in business. And today is no exception. And when I'm not doing this show, I'm helping women package and sell their expertise using story presentation. That's right. So let's go on to today's conversation. You know, in these days, when we talk about medical field, there's a lot of people complaining because sometimes you go to the hospital and you feel like the doctor is not seeing you. You're not even there. You feel like the doctor is not hearing you. And the doctor, listen, they do amazing work. And sometimes they do a lot of overtime, overwhelmed working with patients. So how do we get the help we need from them? And how do they get the help they need from us? Because they are also human. So today we are going to talk about all that. So my guest today is Dr. Narrate Redelfs. She is a retired medical doctor and a psychiatrist who addresses physical and psychological symptoms from a developmental perspective. She has written 4 books on human development and the trauma that often interferes. As a gardener of the soul, oh my God, she's going to tell us about being a gardener of the soul. She assists her clients in hearing the soul messages in their symptoms, relationship difficulties, and other life challenges. Please help me welcome our guest, Dr. Narrate Redelfs. Welcome to the show.
A heart-filled howdy from Texas.
Awesome. Thank you for coming to the show. It's been a while since we last spoke. So, for those people that don't know who you are, tell the audience, tell our viewers, who are you?
Well, I'm a retired medical doctor and retired psychiatrist, as you said. And I must say, during my training, the field didn't work for me. I found myself getting sicker. And so I thought, well, if it's not working for me applying what I'm learning, maybe it's not working for others either. So I took a sabbatical and started working on myself diligently. And I vowed to come up with a new form of medicine that treats not just the physical body, but the emotional body, the mind, the spirit. Because one thing that always struck me is you have a patient coming into the hospital and we would say, oh, we have a 32-year-old white female who presents with this carcinoma or whatever. And I thought, okay, that's the physical age. What about the emotional age? What about the mind? What about the spirit? We need to be looking at the whole of a person. So that's my new form of medicine, looking at the whole, treating the whole, and understanding that the whole is communicating through every symptom and every disease process.
Awesome. So today we are talking about a feminine approach to medicine. That's right. We're talking about a feminine approach to medicine, and we're going to dive into this conversation. So tell our viewers, how did you get here? How did you get here? You know, I've always said that it is the walk in the valley that we learn the greatest lesson. The walk, I can't get it out. The walk through the valley that we get the greatest lessons. And oftentimes we see people when they have arrived, when they have climbed the mountain, but it's not on the mountain that we get the lesson. For the most part, the greatest lessons we get is the walk through the valley. So tell our viewers, how has that walk been for you in the valley?
It's been a rough walk, I'll tell you. I grew up in an extremely traumatizing home. My father was you could diagnose him as a psychopath. He was very, very violent.
Can you raise your voice a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a violent home. And to give you an example, I have some props here. The average person has a whole soul, both masculine and feminine inside. And when we have a lot of trauma, we tend to separate from parts of ourselves. So typically, females are chased away from the masculine side and vice versa. And people will go through life with just a part of themselves rather than the whole of themselves. So this was my experience. And because I had so many traumas, there were a lot of pieces missing. So I had to spend my adult life finding the pieces of myself. Now, this piece was highly motivated, very driven to achieve because I had so much trauma I was running away from. So very successful, but not successful in life because I had a lot of missing pieces. And certainly not a complete life. I was an academic and I needed to round out, balance out, and find the missing pieces of myself. And so in this process, I became aware that most people have lost parts of themselves. Most men are not very in touch with at least part of their feminine sides. And the same with women. They're not fully in touch with all of their masculine side. And as a result, they are not fully present, being all that they can be in life. And so I call myself a soul gardener because we're looking for those missing pieces. We're finding them, planting them firmly in the ground of our being, and watering them each day and tending them and giving them what they need to be fully functioning aspects of ourselves. So we can all be fully engaged in all aspects of life, personally, professionally, being with kids, being with men, being with women, being out in the world, being in the inner world. We're comfortable with all of it because we have all of ourselves.
Unbelievable. Listen, you are called soul gardener, and it makes sense because as you so describe it, we are getting pieces of ourselves that were lost in the process or in our journey through life. And I know because my work with women, helping women narrate their story, helping them unpack their story, and oftentimes that story keeps us from moving on and creating the life that we want. And when you are able to unpack that story, find a pieces of yourself, whatever that self, whatever that journey is, whatever that story is. And I said, there is no bad story. It's simply an experience. But when you can unravel it, when you can unpack it and look at it as a tool to help somebody else and look at it as a part of your journey, it makes it a lot easier to move on in life, to create the life that you so desire, to be able to help other people who are going through it or who are still going to go through it in the future. Your job would have been done. Go ahead.
I have a great story to contribute to what you just said. I was diagnosed with a melanoma many years ago, and I came back from the doctor just floored. I couldn't believe it because I thought I was doing everything right. I was eating natural foods, I was exercising, I was doing therapy. This is impossible. I just couldn't get it. So I turned on Les Miserables. Are you familiar with that Broadway show?
I shy away from pills. I call them chemical, but no.
Well,
no.
I put on that Broadway show, and there's a song that goes, there's a grief that can't be spoken. There's a pain that goes on and on. And as I listened to the song, I just started weeping. I cried and cried, and I thought, now what is this about? And all of a sudden, a part of my life opened up that I'd completely forgotten. And it was so painful. It was agonizing. But that's what the cancer represented. And I processed it. I worked it through. I grieved. And then I did have surgery to have the cancer removed, but that was it. And that's what I find about all of our illnesses. They represent something. either some part of our life we need to be addressing, some part of ourselves we need to be addressing, because I found a lost part of myself in that part of my life that I hadn't integrated. So this is the good news about our illnesses. They're trying to help us. They're trying to get us to bring to ourselves something of our past that we haven't been willing to look at. We haven't been willing to embrace that wounded part of ourselves that was involved in that circumstance. And they're trying to help us heal and grow.
They help us grow. You know, you said something and it's all related. And I see it every time that I work with my clients. And sometimes, and we're going to dive deeper into this. Sometimes in our lives, when we go through trauma, we don't want to talk about it. We repress that part of it that we don't want to talk about. The other side of it is that there's a part of you that you're not able to open up because there's something wrong somewhere, and that part of you represses that part, and that part doesn't get to breathe. And oftentimes, and we might work with women, they don't have a voice. They don't have a voice. And oftentimes when you dig deep, when you begin to narrate your story and unpack that story and unravel that story, you find out there is something that caused all that. So take me where it all began for you. You talked about the fact that you were retired. You are a retired medical doctor, but something happened before you got there. Can you take us there?
Well, I started hearing my patients' souls tell me why they were so sick. And how this came about is I would just come home and cry and cry and cry why these people were suffering so much. And dear Lord, why? And it was like their souls heard me and they started communicating, or I started hearing the soul level of a person saying, well, this is why this person's sick. This is why this person's dying. And there was always a very, very good reason. And thinking of one particular person, had everything going for him, just a really amazing life. But on his deathbed, his mom was holding his arm saying, I never could let go of you, could I? Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is his way of getting away from his mother by dying. He can't think of another way. And if people had this information ahead of time, they could find another way, like with a coach like you, Dr. Christie, who could guide them in another way. But there's always some very good reason behind all these diseases, all these injuries and accidents we get into.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question that our viewers may be thinking to themselves right now, watching this. As they're watching this, they're probably thinking, how do you get to hear you are the soul gardener? How do you get to hear your patients? And I know what, I have an idea because I coach people and I can understand what's going on. The unsaid words, I can really hear the unsaid words, what's going through the person's mind. But talk to me as a medical doctor. Talk to me as a medical doctor. So I walk into your office and I'm sick, I'm complaining, or perhaps I feel I have migraine. I'm going through migraine and this migraine has been going on for so long. I cannot understand. I've taken some medication, but it doesn't seem to go away. And I come to your office. What do you tell me? How do you hear my soul?
Well, first of all, the going away is more of the masculine model. Masculine model is to fix things, right? And I know when we have pain, we do want the masculine model as quickly as possible. But the feminine model is to relate. So with a headache, something in our head is aching us. There's something in here that's painful. So it's an opportunity to look at, where has your mind been lately? Is there some sort of belief system? Like so many people have a belief system that's very detrimental as far as, I'm not here to do anything particularly important. It's like, oh my goodness, yes you are. Everyone has something important here to do. And to be able to look at what that belief system is that's causing so much pain.
And that's why, and I guess I don't want to take the word out of your mouth, is that the reason then you name it a feminine approach to medicine? Because feminine part of it is talking about relationship. The masculine part of it is saying, let's get it done right now. Let me give you a pill and it should stop what's the migraine headache that is going on. But the feminine part of you is saying, let's find out what's been going on with you. What could be causing it? Are there things you are thinking about? Are there unresolved issues? And oftentimes you find out that that's really what the case is. It's just manifesting itself through the migraine headache. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And whenever we have pain anywhere in our body, it's time to say something in me is in pain and get to know him or her. And this is the difference between the medical model that might reduce something human, our physical body is human, to an it, the pain, and the emotional side or the feminine side will embrace that as a friend and say, oh gosh, you're in pain. Tell me about it. What's bothering you? I'd like to hear. And
I can imagine how you felt at that time. You were still you were still practicing. What did your fellow doctors think about your approach and the way you viewed practicing medicine? Just curious.
I kept it very much to myself, except in regards to patients, because I'm thinking of one particular, this was a child who had to have open heart surgery during Christmas vacation. And after the surgery, her mom came up to me, it was a few days later, and said, there's something wrong with my daughter. She's just like a totally different person since the surgery. I'm really worried. And the daughter was there in the room as we were talking, and I just started to sense into the girl's experience. And I thought, well, let me share what her experience is. All her friends are having a good time. She's in the hospital. They're enjoying their presence, and she's recovering from open heart surgery. And I just started laying out one by one all that this little girl has been through. And as I'm saying it, the little girl starts to cry. Mom starts to cry. They start hugging each other and crying together. And it was so beautiful. She just needed to release the feelings that were involved in this incredibly stressful circumstance. And then she was fine. She was back to herself. And this is the whole thing, to get back to ourselves, not just a piece of ourselves, but the whole of ourselves. And that is what so much of our illness is about, because if we're having pain somewhere, something in me is in pain, as I mentioned, and it gives us the opportunity to find a missing part of ourselves that we might not be aware of were it not for the pain, saying, there's something here that's in pain. Let's go find him or her. Let's remedy the problem and incorporate this part into our lives in a happy way. Pain gone. That's an effective long-term goal.
It sounds so good listening to you. So refreshing listening to you. But I also know that most of the time we deal with the mainstream medicine, right? We're not talking about alternative for the most part. And it's a struggle between the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, so the whole 9 yards. But at the end of it, the patients get to suffer. Because to a certain extent, I really believe to a certain extent, and I don't want anybody to feel offended, but to a certain extent, I think it's all about the mighty dollar. That's the bottom line. It's all about the mighty dollar, but the patient is at the bottom of it. We are the ones to suffer. Imagine going to a doctor's office and you're sitting there telling the doctor, I know something is wrong. You don't know what's wrong. I know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. That's why you go to the doctor. That's why you go to the hospital, because you don't know what's wrong. you want to be diagnosed. But immediately, they've already diagnosed you in their head because they went to school. So in other words, they kind of know based on what they read what's wrong with you. And you still sitting there and say, I don't know. That's not what this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm feeling. What you saying, sometimes you cannot verbalize it and tell the doctor. But you saying within yourself, I know what you're saying, I hear what you're saying, but that's not how I'm feeling. So how does one rescue herself or himself at that time?
Well, there are all sorts of doctors in the world, and they're in different stages of human development. And this is part of what I teach, is helping people to see where they are in their human development. And we're all in different areas and in the different places of life. As a matter of fact, I have a rug here that shows the stages of
I see that. Those are lovely.
And the completed man is in the center. When we are absolutely complete, we have picked up all the missing pieces of ourselves, and we're wholly integrating all that we are into our lives. But it takes a while to get there. So it's important to interview your doctor to see where they are in their development. For example, some people believe in real strong, harsh, nearly kill you methods that, you know, they've learned that no pain, no gain kind of thing. Whereas as we progress in our development, our methods become gentler and they become more developmental, as far as it's not just to make the symptoms go away, but it's help the patient become a better person. That when they've recovered from this illness, they are farther along in their development than before the illness. That's a success.
That's a success. And I think in these days is very challenging. It's very challenging because on the medical professional side, there's a lot of pressure because they only have the amount of time to do the job. There's so many people that are sick. You have fewer and fewer doctors in the medical field. It's the work, oh my God, what they do, I take my heart out for them because they do amazing work. But there's also that part of it that we haven't figured out how to deal with this. We have not figured out how to deal with this because the patients are suffering because they are not getting the treatment they need. The doctors are suffering because they are overworked and overwhelmed, and to a certain extent underpaid as well. So I don't want anybody to be watching and listening to this and thinking it's a thing against the doctors. That's not what we're saying. We're talking about a different approach to healing, a different approach to medicine. How can we get what we want in a different way? If we are not going through it using the mainstream, how else can you get diagnosed? How else can you heal your body? You know, I've always said that everything God creates or everything God created solves a problem. Everything that God created solves a problem. I still believe so. But the question is, how do we figure out those things that solve a problem so that we are not dying for no reason?
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I find the problem of an illness is often to solve a greater problem. And so once we realize that, we seek not only to cure the illness, but to solve the greater problem that it's directing our attention to. Like autoimmunity is on the rise in this country, and that self-attacking self. How are we attacking ourselves? How are we not allowing and loving and encouraging in our lives every part of ourselves? So it's an opportunity to look at the emotional realm. Are there any emotions that, oh, I don't do anger, or, oh, no guilt here, I've never done anything wrong. You know, all these things that people block in themselves, they're part of us. They're part of our humanity. We have to find a way to love them, embrace them as part of us. And so autoimmunity has us looking at, are we allowing all of our emotions? Are we being honest about our thinking? Are we being true to our spiritual nature? So there are all these deeper layers beyond the curing the illness.
You know, COVID, we didn't like COVID. We still don't like COVID, but COVID has really brought up a lot of things that we're now discussing, or we need to discuss, that we don't really think about it. And one of being that depression is on the rise. Depression is on the rise now. Divorce is on the rise because of it. I said they said it's because of COVID, but I say since COVID, we just decided to notice this. It has always been there. It's just the way. This is the time that it manifested the most, right? But it's not really about the COVID. It's something like you were talking, kind of your way of treating people is really, what is at the root of depression? It's on the rise now, but there's something that is causing it, and it's a way of coming out because it has been untreated for so long. And that's why I like our conversation about a feminine approach to medicine, because again, it goes back to relationship. It goes back to untreated relationship that has been ignored. It can be at work. It can be with your spouse. It can be with your family, your children, anybody. It can be with just friends. It doesn't really matter because our human body is so sensitive. Oftentimes, we have learned that we have to mask it. If you're a man, you have to be masculine. You're not supposed to cry. You are macho. If you cry, you are a sissy, or like they say in my country, you are a woman rapper if you're a man and you are so soft, right? So
it's this part.
Oh my God, but that person is dying, but the society have told you you can't cry. You're not supposed to open up. You're not supposed to, say how you feel. How are you? I'm doing great, but you're not really doing great. But if I tell you that I'm not doing great, I must be a complainer. I must be a weaker soul. And so I squash all that inside of me because I don't want people to see me as a wiggler. I don't want you to feel like I'm a complainer, there's a part of me that I'm always sick, that I'm going to the doctor, but I can't tell you because if I tell you, you look at me differently. If I tell you that I've been sexually abused, you look at me differently. If I tell you that I've been in a bad relationship for 20-something years, 30-something years, you look at me differently, right? And with my work with women, I see that's part of the problem because, you convince yourself that you're shy. You convince yourself that you're an introvert because there's parts of you that is still not willing to open up parts of you, because what if you open that part of you up and now people will find out, there's people that's going to find out she's not really who I thought she was. And they'll start treating you different. And so it's normal to want to protect yourself. It's normal to want to just bring everything in so nobody knows what's going on. It's normal to hold it in when I know that I'm sad, because whatever happens, it could be any type of thing, relationship, work, you've been laid off from work or whatever it is, affecting you differently than it affects the other person. But I don't really want to tell people how it affects me. But what if they know that I'm really sad? What if they know that I worry so much that I may not have money to put food on the table? What if they know that I'm not really this person they think that I am, but on social media, I'm showing them a different part of me, right? What if they knew? All of that, they manifest in different ways. They manifest in different ways. But it's about giving yourself permission to be all of you. And I talk about it oftentimes. It's not about the money. the money is good. If you are in business, the money is good, but the money really is a confirmation that you have provided the service, a confirmation that you have delivered the product. That is the confirmation of money. If you do what you're supposed to do, you never have to worry about money. And I love this conversation as we go into this conversation, talking about health manifesting itself, problem manifesting itself through a different type of problem, which is sickness, which is illness. But it's really a problem that was undiagnosed, but it's coming up as an illness. So my question is, how do we get to figure that out on our own? Can we figure that out on our own without getting to somebody else, an alternative medicine doctor? How can we figure this out? How do we live life and live it happily is my question.
Well, one thing to know, and this is just basic information, is we all have it all. We all have it all. It's just what we do with it. Do we use our sadness to hurt people, or do we express it as the sadness wants to be expressed? And that's one thing I always encourage clients to sense into each of their emotions and ask them how they want to be expressed. Not how you want to do it, how the emotion wants to do it. And one tool that's very effective as far as people working with themselves is called the right hand, left hand technique. And with our dominant hand, we can write to our emotion or the part of ourselves that's surfacing that we didn't know about, or to our illness, our depression. Dear depression, why isn't you are coming into my life right now? And then allow the non-dominant hand to write back. Well, what really upset me was the loss of our marriage, the loss of our child, the loss of our freedom during the COVID crisis, whatever it might be. I find depression always is a result of loss at some level, internal loss, external loss, many that have built up over the years. So it's a matter of tuning into all those losses and allow the grief to release.
And I love this conversation because you really are looking at medicine from a different perspective, not from the way we usually look at medicine. It boils down to relationship. When we talk about relationship, it's huge. Now it's a relationship with yourself. We're now talking about relationship with yourself from beginning to the end, from the head to the toe, the entire body.
Yes.
Every bit of it. We're talking about relationship with yourself.
I'm laughing because it's so funny when people start to talk to themselves for the first time. Like, you want me to talk to my pancreas? That's where the disease is. Yeah, I want you to talk to your pancreas.
I'm talking to you because some people will shy away from, as I work with clients, I realize something. We all, including myself, have parts of us that we quite don't understand. And one of the challenges is being still. Yet, being still and not scheduling all your time with something. Busy, but segmenting some time to just be by yourself, dating yourself, go on a date with me, with you.
Love it.
Right? It can be scary. It can be scary because if you wake up at 6 o'clock, every single hour, every single minute, you have something scheduled because you're on a quest for whatever your goal is. But oftentimes it's even difficult to devote 1 or 2 hours every single day to stay still. And parts of it, I may be wrong, is that maybe you'll find out parts of you that you really don't want to confront. Maybe there's parts of you, if you stay still and start thinking about that trauma, I don't want to go back that trauma. If I stay by myself and I start talking about or thinking about that abuse, I don't want to go through that. I don't want to remember that. So I'll shut it down. If I'm by myself and I'm thinking about, then I start thinking about a lot of things that didn't go well in my life. I don't want to think about it, right? But are you of the opinion that that part of you never get healed, and that part of you still holds you back from creating the life that you want to create in the world?
And to me, that's the key is, and the clue of how much we've resolved our past, if we're willing to go back there. Like if you meet someone who's also a trauma survivor and you're willing to share your story, you feel that they need to hear it just so they know someone else has been there too and they survived, then you're free to come and go. You know, you're not, oh no, I'm not going back, nor are you, I'm not leaving. But no, whatever, how your spirit directs you so you can minister to others to the best of your ability, you have that complete flexibility. And I would say that about all our human traits. Whenever we're clinging to something, or no, I will never be angry, there's a problem there, there's trauma. But if we're willing to go into it or step out of it, we have that fluidity. That's healthy.
And you know, you brought up a point, and you brought up a point because anytime there's not anytime, but sometimes when somebody is talking about, say for example, you're somebody who's very skinny, right? And somebody's making fun of skin. They may not be directing that to you. They may not be directing that to you, but you take offended. The reason you're taking offended is because perhaps you don't like that being skinny, and somebody's making fun of somebody who's skinny, right? But then you don't really, and you always want to shy away from it. That's kind of what you were saying. You always want to shy away. But what if you confront it? I love being skinny. What if you can look at it from a different lenses and interpret that, you know, differently than you're interpreting it? At least if I'm skinny, I don't have to try so many clothes on before I find the one that fits me. If I interpret it differently, I will get a different result. That's really what you're saying. But you're also saying that if you have not confronted that, now in my example, I'm using being skinny, but it could be any number of things. If you have not dealt with why does that really bother you anytime somebody talk about being skinny, why does that bother you? Is there something about that is also manifesting in a different way? And you don't have the voice. You can't say it out. You can't verbalize it, but yet it's causing other problems. That's really what you're saying, is it?
And that's when abusive people suddenly turn around and you see that even though that child has been teasing me about being skinny for years, if it's dealing with my issues and I'm realizing I've got an issue with being skinny, then it becomes a useful thing rather than an abuse. So things are always twisting and turning, if that makes sense. As we learn to use everything to get to know ourselves better and to pick up the missing pieces of ourselves and return to wholeness, it's we no longer make the quick judgments because they're always changing as we grow. It becomes, oh, that was useful. I'd like to give you an example. I broke my arm a few years ago, and it was clearly broken. And so it was in the summertime, not going swimming. I was quite miserable, but something in me was broken, obviously. So I worked it out. Something in me is broken, and it turned out to be a wonderful gift. So the ruining my swimming turned into, gosh, I grew tremendously. What a gift.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, when you mentioned it a little bit, but I don't want to go past it. I want to take you back. I want to take you back to your years of practicing, let's talk about trauma and how that trauma affects an individual way into an adult. And you're looking at somebody, you're saying they're stupid, they don't know what they're doing. You're looking at about 60-year-old, 50-year-old, and they are not acting the way you expect them to act. Can you talk to me in relation to trauma and what that does to human brain?
Yeah, the thing about trauma is we increasingly get focused on what will keep us safe. And rather than the human developmental journey, we're more about, if I do this, I won't get harmed. If I do this, he won't yell at me. If I do this, and it more and more consumes us. And our behavior is more about keeping ourselves safe, or at least safe in our own minds, than what is most productive. And a rigidity sets in. I know you all heard of fight, flight, or freeze, the animal response to threat. Well, that freeze can be in any behavior pattern. So we're no longer flexible to human need. We are frozen in what we've learned is the best way to be safe, at least in our own experience. And so that's when people become rigid in their character, doing whatever they've learned is best for them, but it's not best for their spouse. It's not best for their children. They have no fluidity to meet human need. And so that's why it's so important to go back and deal with our traumas so we can realize where we learned these safety mechanisms and work them through so we have the fluidity to be in the present with the people in the present, not the people in the back that we can get frozen in these trauma situations, but be with the people we're with and see what they need and give them what they need.
And so does that, when we talk about, you have a 7-year-old child that has been abused at home so badly, they couldn't call the authority, they couldn't speak about it at school, and that child grows up, never talked about it to anybody, but it manifests in different ways. And I've seen where individuals are 40 years old, 50 years old, and they're acting. And I think oftentimes, now that I look back, I can see a lot of things. They're acting like a child. And you saying to yourself, oh my God, they're acting like a child. Talk to me about developmental stages in terms of human being and how that impacts your behavior as we grow.
Yeah, the acting like a child is, some part of them is stuck there. And that's what I find, that when we're separated in our soul, and like a male will have a very immature feminine side if this isn't growing up alongside him. And it may even be in the unconscious mind. He doesn't even know the feminine side. And so what can happen is that these two sides of a person can have very different life experiences. Like, this guy might think, my life's been pretty good, but his feminine side has been horribly abused. He wasn't there. He was over here. So these parts of people can, if they're stuck at very young stages of development, and trauma causes regression, people go back in development, they lose their milestones, they will act at the youngest stages. Like, if this part of a male is stuck in infancy, what do infants do? They imitate. And if they've known trauma, they imitate trauma. And that's when you have so many of these examples of people that, my girlfriend said I did that, and I never did it. No, I didn't.
Yes.
This is the part of him that did it. The part that's stuck in infancy, who's recreating the trauma that he's never dealt with. She dealt with it, or she lived it. And now she's recreating it, trying to get attention and help. Someone help me work it through. but he doesn't know that part of himself. It's in the unconscious mind, and he's just saying, I never did it, I never did it.
And so, it's something else, because I think because we live in a microwavable society, we don't have time for anybody and anything. Everything is fast, 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 right? And that's even affecting us as the way we relate to one another. So you're looking at an individual. I guess, let me ask it in a different way. Someone that has gone through trauma and gets stuck at that age. The trauma may have happened at the age 7. They are 50 years old, but they are still stuck at 7 years old, right? Is there a way, because I'm looking at that person, you should know better, acting like a child, but that person doesn't know any better. That person doesn't see anything wrong that they're doing, that she or he is doing, right? Because in his mind or in her mind, he believes or she believes, I am doing what I'm supposed to do. She doesn't even see herself as being a 50-year-old or seeing anything different than what she was doing, because the brain never really got developed, is what you're saying. The brain never really got developed. The question is, how can they now figure out where they were at 7 years old so that they can fix the problem, because there's something wrong at 40 years old? Can they, and how?
Yeah. What I do is I help people to say hello to these young parts of themselves, and they close their eyes, they tune in. Who was that who spoke to my wife, husband, whoever, that way? Mm-hmm. And the next thing you know, this little child will come into their mind, and they'll realize, oh my goodness, this is real. They need to have some sort of tangible experience. And sometimes people can't do the inner work because they are young, totally young. You know, it's not just a young part. They themselves are stuck at a very young age. And then they need something tangible, like dolls. I often use dolls. So they have something tangible to hold a doll of that age and see if they can get the feelings, bring up some memories, maybe use pictures. The younger a person is, the more they need something tangible to work with. In healthy development, around 11 years of age, you go into abstraction and you can start being abstract with concepts. But if someone's stuck at a younger age than that, they need something more tangible to really get the concepts.
Wow. This is a new way of treating people. And I'm telling you, I think that's what you talk about, being whole. You know, treating somebody, not just your hand, your feet, your leg, whatever, but treating somebody as a whole. Because yes, sometimes you can have an accident, something can happen, that's different. But ordinarily, regular illness. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying from my own experience, regular illness like depression, right, can be a manifestation of something. The problem is that when it doesn't get diagnosed and treated, it takes on a different form and it goes on for a very long time. You know, we are what we think about, and after a while, it becomes who we are. We get stuck in that place. The problem is, there any way an individual can do this work? Maybe they don't have access to somebody like you. How can I do this work if I'm suffering from depression right now? What do I need to do to maybe begin to heal myself? If I feel like I want a whole treatment, medicine, I want to look at healing in a feminine approach. How can I do that if I don't have somebody like you?
Start a conversation. Assume that you're talking with some aspect of yourself that you're not fully aware of. So if I identify with this part of me, if it's in my unconscious mind, is going to be pounding in every way possible, trying to get my attention. You lost me. Hey, pick me up. I want to be part of your life again. And it'll speak through body symptoms. It'll speak through depression, right? Loss of a part. So assume that every symptom you have is a part of your humanity, crying out for help, wanting attention, and address it in that way by relating as you would to a friend. Hello, sore foot. Sore, oh my goodness, the word means angry. Am I angry about something? I am. And foot is an extremity. It's the furthest part from my heart, my torso. So is there something extreme inside me? Because when we get rid of parts of ourselves, they can get rather extreme, trying to get our attention and help. So that's a few examples of how you can just tune in to that part of you and assume, like any severe illness, like let's say a rapidly forming cancer that's very destructive, there's a lot of anger there. An illness that's destructive, there's anger there. Deal with that anger. Where's that anger coming from? Where did it originate? Why is it that particular body organ? Every body organ is expressing something in particular. Like, for example, I was, this was during the height of the COVID crisis, that particular early December, I woke up congested. And I normally have congestion, at least I used to, in the Christmas season. So I didn't think anything of it until, I can't leave the house. People will think I have COVID. They won't know I have allergies. Okay. So I stayed in bed all day saying, I'm not getting out until I get to the bottom of this. And I started getting memory after memory after memory of Christmas seasons where so many things sad happened. Oh my goodness. I cried on and off all day. And the next morning I woke up clear as a bell. I haven't had allergies since, and which is a miracle. And it was just held in grief. Congestion makes sense, right? We get congested when we're crying a lot.
Yes.
I find that any body fluid accumulating is often expression of grief that hasn't been released.
So in other words, you saying what we probably have read some of it or come across people talking about it, and that is the fact that our body attracts experiences we have in life. All the experiences we have in life, our body attracts and consumes it. And if we don't deal with it, it will manifest. The negative ones will manifest itself in forms of illness. I think the challenge that most of us have is being able to diagnose ourselves. Is being able to stay still. And I keep coming back to staying still. Taking some time to stay still and figure out what is going on. Really, like you, I feel funny. I have to be honest. I'm gonna feel funny asking myself, self, what? Hey, I'm gonna be honest. You know, talking to myself, I think I'm crazy. But really, spending time with yourself and having a date, dating yourself, just taking the time and go on a date yourself and find out, talk to yourself.
And a few clues, you can always go through is there any emotion here that is expressing itself? Like we talked about grief and anger, and guilt is another one that shows up in the body part that we've done something that we're not particularly proud of can start to get sick. And so there's guilt there that needs to be released. And another thing is look at belief systems, whatever's going on in the body, how might it be manifesting a sick belief that I have? And look at body symptoms in terms of past, present, and future, as far as, is this symptom showing me something about my past that's unresolved? Like so many people have genetic illnesses that are really unresolved issues with their parents. And when they deal with their issues, the disease goes away because they dealt with what the disease was trying to bring to their attention. Or something in the present that we're not being careful about, that our bodies are asking us to change. Or sometimes we're given some sort of affliction that is leading us into our future. As far as you can't write about this if you haven't had the experience. So you're going to get the experience. So we want you to write about it. So it's actually an ushering into new skills, new talents, new possibilities.
Unbelievable. I love this conversation. You and I can talk about it. This is huge, because can you imagine that it's all I'm saying this, I'm laughing because I do the same thing. Until you get sick, you don't stop what you're doing. Yeah. Until you get sick, you don't stop what you're doing. But it's almost, I don't have time. But once you get sick, you have time by force. You're forced, because you can't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere. But wouldn't that be nice if we can take the time that we need and work on ourselves, date ourselves, have a conversation, be still for some time, an hour or 2 hours a day. Just stay still. It's amazing what will happen. But like I said, sometimes we fill it up with things, because maybe you're scared to know what will happen if you stay still. Maybe you don't know what will happen. You don't. There's some things you have repressed, and you don't want the memory, and you don't want to date yourself. You don't want to talk to yourself. You don't want to say, hello, self, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? Are you okay? Did something happen? Because it may bring up emotions that you have repressed, and you don't want to think about it anymore. But again, like you said, it manifests itself in so many other illnesses. So as we bring this conversation to the close, take the time. I want you to tell our viewers that are watching, when it comes to taking care of your health, what are the things to look for so that you're treating yourself as a whole treatment? We're talking about a feminine approach to medicine. We're talking about a feminine approach to healing yourself so that you can live however many years that you're supposed to live. Live it healthy. It's just not the number of years that you live on earth, but if you're living and suffering, living through it, it doesn't do anybody any good. So what can you tell us about maximum health, optimum health?
Well, to remember that we're inherently whole. And if we're missing anything as far as, oh, I've never been artistic, or no, I can't dance, or whatever, it's there. It's just a matter of finding it. And to look for what you're missing. In what area of life do you feel incapacitated? And how were you incapacitated? There had to be some trauma. Not that we're all going to be great pianists, but we all have the ability to be creative. It's just some people do it with making portraits, and other people do it with cooking, but we all have a creative ability. We all have a heart which has all the emotions. So which emotion are you noticing? Oh, I'm never this or that. Well, why not? and look for this in your friends and loved ones as well. Where are they missing part of their wholeness? And to me, the extent of the medical problems in our country and world right now are growing so rapidly that every one of us needs to put on the white coat, look at ourselves and look at our loved ones, and see how we can help everyone return to wholeness.
And before I let you go,
your body's trying to do just that.
Our body center is trying to do just that. Before I let you go, I want you to share the lesson that you have learned through your own journey when it comes to a feminine approach to healing that our audience can take. Please do so.
Well, what I've learned is that there is a love and an intelligence to absolutely everything that goes on in our bodies. And it's just a matter of realizing that and being careful not to judge it as a problem, but see it as a friend that is trying to help us. And in that, we can relate to it and get to know what the problem is and be willing together to work it out. And I'd like to invite you to my website, AnnRedelfs.com. I have lots of...
I was going to ask you that, but go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and say it.
Yeah,
website.
GardenerofSoul.com. And I have a lot of videos on stages of development. And that's one way you can help, again, yourself and your loved ones by seeing where they are in development in the various areas of life and help them progress.
Awesome. Awesome. Audience, go ahead and contact Dr. Ann Redelfs and check out the videos and refer, if you need to, the people that you think needs to watch the video, yourself or other people, friends and relatives that can watch the video. And you know, we're talking about a feminine approach to medicine, to healing. The same way, because my work with women, I know that when you narrate your story, when you unpack your story, anything is possible. You begin to see yourself in a way that you never thought possible. You begin to just unleash the things within, because now you have a voice. Now you can talk. Now you can say that thing you never thought you'd be able to say. Now you can get up and serve somebody else just the way you're designed to serve somebody else. And that's what life is about. It's about getting the lesson from your own journey in the valley and get to the mountain top and be able to do what? Transform other people's life. And that's why I love doing this show. And when I'm not doing this show, I help female entrepreneurs package and sell their expertise through story presentation. We do this show every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Share, because I've always said that sharing is giving. And when you giving, other people receive. The blessing is in the giving. Until next time, everybody. Thank you so much, Dr. Redelfs, for joining me. I appreciate you. I thank you for your time. And for everybody else, every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Bye, everybody.